It's 9 a.m. I'm going to now go ahead and call the board meeting to order. I'd like to ask that if you'd like to address the board this morning, please come up to a microphone and identify yourself by name, title, and institution. And also, please go ahead and silence your cell phones at this time. I want to start off by also introducing our board members this morning. Dr. Jerry Cash from Harrison. Thank you for having us in your community. Dr. Catherine Dudley of Little Rock. Chad Hooten of Benton, who I believe is not here this morning. Heather Maxey of Mountain Home. Dr. Kyle Miller of Helena is joining us by Zoom this morning. Lucas Pointer of Bentonville. And Miss Carolyn Reinhardt of Scranton. Mr. Kelly Erstein has been appointed to the UCA Board of Trustees since our last meeting. So he will not be joining us this morning, but we appreciate his service to the board and we'll be acknowledging him in our July board meeting at UCA. Before I turn over to the Finance Committee, I'd like to call on President Massengale for our official welcome.
Hi, thank you, and welcome, everyone. 1973, the city of Harrison put together a proposal and it was adopted, which was the foundation and formation of North Ark College, which actually became in existence in 1974. So welcome to our South Campus, and I extend that to all of y'all. I'm hillbilly, so just take me for what I am. That's who I am and what I believe in. So, but we welcome you here. We have a North Campus where our trade center and our technical center is. We have a campus over in Eastern Carroll County. And then we also are in several schools. We've kind of gone back to our roots at North Ark. A lot of people in the state don't realize that North Ark actually planted inland. And we also planted ASU Mountain Home. And we're going where the kids are at. You know, the day of telling all the kids to come to our college, that's great, but if you live 25 miles away and you don't have a car, that's insurmountable. So it's easier for me to send one person to the community to service 20 as opposed to serve 20 over here that has nobody to and no way to get here. So that's who we are. The good Lord has blessed me. I'm a man of faith. He has blessed me to be here, put me with a lot of servants. That's what they believe in, is serving their fellow man. So I hope you feel that in our college. We take no shame in anything we profess. We have a beautiful campus. We have an amphitheater, but the most important part is the hill on the other side of the amphitheater. When you leave today, we do a summer movie series. That's where the fire department turns the water hose on and the kids slide down and we send them home muddy and caked in mud. But that's the most popular thing on campus. Also you'll notice when you got here, you'll hear the jackhammer going over to the other side of the baseball field. That's where our new Centers for Robotics and Manufacturing and Innovation will be going. It's a 32,000 square foot facility that we're going to use to help promote our industry partners. The idea is, you know, in this state when it's so competitive that we have to really stay on touch and stay intact with everything. A company cannot afford to shut down just to change out of line. So if they want to be innovative, if they want to try something new, they'll be able to come over to this innovation center, set up the line, get the bugs worked out, shut it down in one night, switch it out and move it into it. It's open to any of our facilities. It's also going to have a place for us to teach some of our high-skilled technical trades in our computer and robotic programming. So we're excited about that. We've just opened up our new art expansion. I'm not an artist, and if you ever seen any of my drawings, you would understand that. But I was told that the clay and the paint wasn't coexisting good together. We had a faculty member that actually wrote a grant that got part of that money, and then she wrote another grant that got the match for it. So it was a zero cost pretty much to the college for us to put in and expand and double our art expansion. And like I said, we're blessed. We live in the Ozarks where some of the best people in the world live. Hopefully y'all are feeling that. I would ask too, before we get out of here, just to kind of show our hospitality, would y'all please eat that food? Because if you don't, IT is going to eat it and they're not worth the flip when they get full. So. But welcome to North Ark, guys. Thank you.
I'm now going to call the full board meeting to order. Before we begin, please remember to silence your cell phones. We're also getting reports that the weather may be a little sticky outside, and so we are monitoring that. But just in case the weather does turn severe, we're all just going to exit out these doors and either go into the hallway or go into this under the stairs. So, okay. So moving right along on. For the full board, action agenda item number 13. It's our first item of business. That is the minutes from the January 26, 2024 meeting, which begin on page 13-1 of your agenda book. Are there any questions or changes that are needed to these minutes?
I'll make a motion to approve.
Thank you, Carolyn. Do I have a second?
I second it.
So I have a motion and a second to approve the minutes of January 26, 2024 regular meeting. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Item passes. Information agenda item number 14. That is our commissioner's report. Dr. Ken Morgan will present.
Chair Biggers, members of the board, distinguished guests, first, just let me start by thanking you for your service and dedication to higher education in Arkansas. I appreciate your time this morning and all you do each and every day to work to improve the lives of Arkansans and provide opportunities and prosperity for our citizens. I want to begin by thanking the AHECB staff who worked really hard every day and work in the service of our institutions and our students. And so I want to appreciate them, in particular, Ms. Nicole Abernathy, who makes me look much smarter than I am on a daily basis. So can I give Nicole a round of applause? I want to start with announcing an institutional change. Dr. Wade Durden has been named the new president of National Park College, effective July 1 of 2024. He currently is the executive vice president for investment and government relations at National Park. We know Dr. Durden, good man. We look forward to all the things and good work he's going to do to build on what Dr. Hogan has done over the last several years, and I wish him and National Park all the best in this new time and for the institution. My report today is a little atypical. I want to talk a little bit about some of the K-12 things that are going on, and I think there's some connectivity that I'm pretty proud of and some work that's being done. As you may recall, the Division of Career Technical Education was realigned in the org chart with the Division of Higher Education last July. And since that time, we've been working directly with Ross White, who's the director of that division, and his team to make sure that things that are going on within and around the center, the career technical education, and also with elementary, secondary, are in better alignment with higher ed. I think it's important to us to act as one Department of Education, really live and articulate those transition opportunities from our students as they exit high school and move into either a career or enroll with us or into enlist in the military. So the LEARNS Act required that a career pathway diploma be developed. You may remember in past years, we've had core and smart core. And I think over time, what the perception was is that when you had core and smart core, you had smart core and not so smart core. And that's something I think we can ill afford, especially when we're talking about a career pathway diploma. So we worked with the division, and my comments and my vision for that was, if we're going to have a career pathway to a diploma, that career diploma has to be everything a standard high school diploma is, plus something, not a diploma minus something. We need talented individuals to recognize opportunities in career education as well as traditional academic pathways, because talent is talent. And we want those talented students to know there's opportunities there and let them understand the opportunities and then figure out how they want to distinguish themselves in their education and career pathways. So the first slide you'll see there is an infographic that talks a little bit about what the graduation requirements for all students are, which is an academic core, purposeful courses aligned, and then community service. And then another designation above a standard high school diploma was a diploma of distinction, where you have a sequence of courses in a success-ready career pathway. It's aligned to higher education opportunities again, and a demonstration of career readiness through assessments, demonstrated skill proficiency, and industry recognized credentials. So as of now, there are 60 different pathways or frameworks for career technical curricula in secondary education. 60 different options that a district can choose to employ in their school district and to give their lead to their students. And those are everything from culinary to automotive service to ag, okay, or family consumer science. So what we did was go through using labor market data, and we determined that there were 18 of those that separated from the pack that were what we call H2, which are high wage, high demand, and narrowed that list to 18. So the slide you see here is where you see the diploma, and then you see the other things that have to be done to get a state distinction. So to get a state distinction, you can complete 3 years of that pathway in one of the 18. So it's not just any career pathway to be distinct. You distinguish yourselves by attending and completing one of these career pathways in the 18 areas of distinction. And go next slide, please. So those 18 areas are what you see on the slide. So that's the 18 of the 60 that we determined to be high wage, high demand. Now, this is not an all-encompassing list. And there are areas that have either emerging industries or existing demand in their region where that may not be on this list. So there are ways to add high wage, high demand pathways other than what's here. So if a district comes back to us and say, this is great, but we have jobs, we have students interested in those jobs, we need to articulate this pathway and teach this pathway, and we need it to count for distinction. There's a way for them to come back to us, justify that with their industry partners, show the demand, show the labor market regionally, or if there's an emerging industry that they know they have new job opportunities related to a certain industry sector, they can identify those as that industry emerges, and then we can add that to the list. So there's regional justifications, emerging industries, and considerations other than just wage or demand. For instance, we have credentials of value that may be high demand and high value, but not high wage. We are promoting pre-K education, and we need more pre-K education, but pre-K is not a high wage job. Those professionals that choose to work in that field don't make a lot of money, but it has an extremely high social value to us. So there are things that are of value to us that may not be such a high wage. So we have to have considerations about, okay, what are those that maybe don't make the most money, but we know that we need in our society and that we need to make our communities better. And so we have opportunities to add those special considerations as well. Other than, and this is some things at the bottom of particular that I'm particularly proud of, if a student wants to have a diploma of distinction, and maybe they want to go in a traditionally academic pathway, or they want to use that to take a series of courses that are not in one of those pathways, we will also value an advanced placement diploma, the Cambridge AHECB diploma, International Baccalaureate, World Languages Seal of Biliteracy, or 12 hours of post-secondary credit. If a student achieves 12 hours of post-secondary credit before they exit high school, they can also receive a diploma of distinction. The idea is that we know that around 50% of our high school seniors do not have a full schedule. So they have holes in their schedule, and then they come to us, and we know that the remediation rates are higher than what we would like to see. So we hope that by encouraging our students to a diploma of distinction, our districts, maybe weighting how they are scored in their school grades at some level on how many diplomas of distinction that they produce, We'll encourage students to hang around their senior year, get more work done there, and maybe the inputs to our colleges and universities will be a little bit better than what we're getting now. So the goal is to encourage our districts to offer the courses, to encourage our students to do that. Maybe we look down the road at our scholarship portfolios and maybe do a little better for those who distinguish themselves with the diploma of distinguished or are of the most meritorious, even better. So we, students and parents may not know all of our work, but they do understand the bottom line and the dollar bill. So if they stick around in high school, pick up a few more hours or distinguish themselves with the diploma of distinction, and they know they're going to get a few more scholarship dollars, maybe that's something we can look at down the road. So really to make our communities better, high school graduates better prepared, and have a better input for our colleges and universities. Are there questions about that or anything that you'd like to comment on or speak before I make my last point for my comments? All right, well, thank you so much. The last thing I'd like to say is that the national conversation around higher education, there's this topic of a 90-hour bachelor's degree. Now, standard measure has a bachelor's degree of 120 credit hours. It hasn't been that way for a long, long time. But there are dozens of schools right now around the nation that are piloting 90-hour bachelor degrees. And usually what you do is take an 120-hour curriculum and cut most of the electives out of that degree. This is kind of a polarizing topic, but we don't want the state of Arkansas to be standing here holding the bag as these things come along. We want to try to be help leading that conversation. Mason Campbell and I attended the Higher Learning Commission meeting the last 2 weeks, and this came up, and it looks like the accrediting bodies are embracing at least the thought of doing this. So we're going to be putting together a group of our colleagues across higher ed to see if a 90-hour bachelor's degree is something we think work for Arkansans and work for our state and for our schools, and to explore the possibility of coming back to you all with considerations of a 90-hour bachelor's degree. I'm not saying that we're going to pull up together a 90-hour bachelor's degree at this point. We're going to do a little further study and see if that's something that will work for Arkansas. So with that, I'll conclude my comments.
Just really, do you know which schools, colleges, universities are doing 90-degree bachelor's degree now?
There are a list of them. Mason, would you care to comment on the ones we know? I know BYU is doing one. I know that
Brigham Young in Idaho is the primary model that other institutions are using, but it depends on, there are different accreditors. HLC actually doesn't have any authorized pilots right now, but some of the other accreditors do. So I could provide you a list, Dr. Cash.
I just thought maybe you all had something.
there are, I think, approaching 50 different schools that are doing that, mostly private, some public, but we can get you that list. It's enough. This is not a new thing. It's been talked about for the last 15 or 20 years, but it's something that's been talked about long enough that it's kind of percolating to the top now. And so it's time for us to take a little more serious look at it. So that's what we're planning to do.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Warden. Moving on to information agenda item number 15. Mr. Mason Campbell will present the annual report on first-year student retention.
Thank you, Chairman.
Okay, this report is built on the Arkansas Code that requires institutions of higher education to determine appropriate placement measures for college level courses in English, reading, and mathematics. Act 970 of 2009 expanded the reporting requirements to post-secondary remediation in a few very specific ways. The bullets here on the 3 distinct reporting requirements that are legislated will provide rates for students who enrolled in public institutions and were remediated within 2 years of graduating from high school. We'll show the number of remediated students with a high school GPA of 3.0 or higher. And we will show the number of attempts it typically takes for students to complete remediation. We've also provided a substantial number of additional data points above and beyond these requirements. And we hope this report continues to grow and evolve and improve its effectiveness each year. So beginning with a statewide overview, our cohort for this report includes 21,510 students These first graphics show the distribution of all first-time entering degree-seeking students who enrolled in AY 23 and graduated from high school in either AY 21 or 22. 91% of the students were full-time, 70% enrolled at four-year institutions, and 62% did not require remediation. This graphic shows the state of residence for the full cohort of 21,000 students. 72%, sorry, of the students reside in Arkansas, with the highest concentrations of out-of-state students coming from Texas, Oklahoma, and Missouri. And as we're required by law to report on students required remediation and graduate high school with a 3.0 or higher, for some context, this shows the GPA of the entire cohort. 80% of those 21,510 students had a GPA of 3.0 or higher, which makes sense. The majority of the students entering higher education appear to have strong GPAs. And then for the remainder of the slides, the analysis will focus on the 8,106 students who enrolled in a public institution and took remedial coursework, which is roughly 38% of the first-time entering degree-seeking cohorts. 89% were full-time students, 62% enrolled at four-year institutions, 38% at two-year institutions, and 92% graduated high school and immediately enrolled, where only 8 graduated the year before and delayed enrollment until the following year. And then this graphic shows the state of residence for the remediated student cohort. Similar trends as the larger cohort, 73% of the students reside in Arkansas, and the highest concentrations coming from Texas and Missouri. Here we show a race ethnicity breakdown for the total cohort population and the remediated student population, also with remediation rates for each. And this allows a statewide view of whether some student populations are overrepresented in the remediation proportion to their membership in the total general population. This graphic shows the student enrollments by the type of remedial course. As everybody is aware, Arkansas institutions have spent years improving and shifting their remedial coursework to primarily a co-requisite model, which allows students to enroll directly into the college level gateway course, compares them with the additional remedial support. We still have some standalone remedial courses, and those are either, our terminology is either gateway remedial courses that lead into a college level gateway course, or non-gateway remedial courses that leads into another layer of remedial coursework. Very few of those remaining in the state. This slide shows enrollment by remediation subject and remediation type. And while math, of course, is our most common subject of remediation, most students are in a co-requisite remedial course, which again allows them to earn that college credit for their gateway math course. And co-requisite remediation does not typically have a direct impact on the student's time to graduation. These charts, like this one, are actually in the appendix of the full report. You won't sort of see them in line. The specific one is just for the math rates, and it shows success rates for each type of remediation. The height of the bar shows the enrollment for each course type, and the line shows the median success rate for that particular course type. As you can see, the success rates of the co-requisite model exceed the other types of remediation. Given that most students are enrolling in co-requisite courses, institutions are leveraging the model that likely produces success. These results are similar for English. We see higher success rates in the co-requisite model, but the reading remediation rates actually show standalone remedial gateway success is higher. That one's a little different. And then Again, as we're required by law to report on students who require remediation, graduate high school with a 3.0 or higher. This graph shows that 67% of the students who required remediation had a high school GPA of 3.0 or higher. This slide shows the distribution of ACT test scores among remediated students. Scores have been grouped in 3 score bands based on the common ranges of institutional placement. And although students are placed using different tests and measures, the ACT test is still the most commonly reported test score to our agency. And as you can see, the majority of the remediated students are reporting scores less than 22. And then these 2 charts don't technically provide any new information I've not already covered today, but they place both the GPA and ACT in a common format, so you can begin to see some comparison. This slide only shows the math trends, but the other subjects are in the full report. Again, the blue segments of the bars represent co-rec remediation, which means students are also earning college credit. It's worth noting that in traditional placement, when only looking at ACT, it appears as though the students that are least prepared are being placed into remediation. Look at that chart, but when compared to placement using only GPA, it appears we're placing our most or more prepared students into remediation. And then I want to make a note based on the recent research conducted in Arkansas with Arkansas institutions. Our agency continues to support the use of multiple measures and leveraging high school GPA as an important placement metric. And we hope institutions will expand their placement plans to include more multiple measures and a heavier weight on high school GPA in the future. This slide shows the attempt rate for students taking remediation. As you can see, most students complete remediation on the first attempt at over 92%. And then finally, these last 2 slides show some institutional success data that we've included in the appendix of this year's report. Our intent by including these tables is to help institutions better understand the effectiveness of their placement plans and also help them achieve the goals set by the coordinating board's placement policy. Appendix B, which is what these are from, shows gateway course success rates or college level course success rates for both remediation and non-remediation students. The excerpts on this slide are from 2 institutions and show the rates at which students who were remediated then successfully passed a gateway course for each subject area. And we would consider these 2 institutions to have very strong student success rates. And then still in the appendix C attempts to provide further insight into the effectiveness of an institution's placement plan. We have tables for each subject. The 2 excerpts here are from the math table. Based on the placement policy, an institution's placement plan should reflect better than a 75% student success rate. Success being a grade of a C or better, of course. The table shows college, remedial, and overall placement success rates, meaning the student was successful in the course in which they were placed. And we would consider, again, these 2 institutions to have very strong student placement success measures. Rates. Okay, as with any reports, our results are only as good as the data that we have. And I want to be transparent to the board that our institutions have not had the opportunity to review or validate our analysis on this. This is just another tool for them for continual improvements. And we hope this spins up discussions and insight on how we can better serve all of our students. Additional charts and analysis are also included in the full report of the board book. The academic affairs team and I are available to anyone wanting to dig deeper into the report and to the data. And this concludes my report. I'm happy to answer any questions.
I want to say thank you for the additional data. I know we went through this last year and everybody was pretty surprised when we were looking at the numbers. And And I had asked like, okay, where are these students coming from? And so I appreciate you doing the geographic breakdown, although it wasn't the answer I was really hoping for on that one. But, I mean, thinking about last year's report and this year's report, are we seeing any progress with getting, I mean, like I said, I don't want any kids to be coming into remedial classes. You know, are we seeing more high school preparedness, or we kind of stuck right now?
I think we're starting to see, if you compare to last year's report, most of the numbers are similar. But one of the improvements that we need to make to this report is to include more trend data. So we can see the impact of those institutional efforts and understand where we need to put targeted support. I will say for mathematics, which is our highest area of remediation, we are addressing those issues directly. We have a math pathways state work group that focuses on aligning coursework, improving the co-rec model, and improving student success rates. And we know that's our biggest challenge, and our institutions stay engaged in that work. I'm not sure if those same work groups are being convened for English and for reading. And then on the K-12 side, we've also seen a lot of recent changes in course standards. And at the last board meeting, the minimum core of all high school courses, in preparation for higher education was adjusted. And we anticipate high school students being more prepared for higher ed in the future as well.
And these are students graduating in 21 and 22, correct?
That's correct.
So probably would have been taking, especially the ACT in the middle of COVID, and
Yes.
so that's probably still a factor with these students.
Still have some of those issues.
When we start breaking down, one challenge for me when wrapping my mind around all of this is that each institution essentially has a different standard for what constitutes remediation. And so seeing the percentage of them, the students requiring is helpful. Is there anything, do you get any sort of data or reports from the institutions about how they're working with some of their local high schools to lower this remediation rate? To make sure that the high schools understand that they're making sure that these kids are prepared for higher ed?
So the tool that we use as the agency to collect all of that and then measure it is our institutional placement plans. And so we've actually just reworked the format of that plan. Part of that reworking will allow us to place all institutional placement metrics in one, basically in one big spreadsheet, so we can see how differently institutions are placing students in one big statewide look. So we hope that'll be a good tool moving forward. Yeah.
Question on the number of graduating high school seniors attending college. If I'm reading this correctly, we only had 15,412 students from Arkansas that attended first-time degree seeking.
For that specific cohort that we identified based on what was in the legislation, yes.
Yes.
But you'll get more, you'll get a better picture if you also look at the enrollment report from the institutions, because it's going to be a different our cohort is specific in that legislation. So it's going to look a little different.
Well, does that represent though all students that, I know it doesn't represent those that aren't degree seeking, but
Right.
all students from Arkansas, and I know you had, I think we've got 72% of all first-time degree seeking students from Arkansas. Is that correct?
That would be first time entering, degree seeking,
Is
full-time,
that-
part-time.
Is that pretty typical of the number of students we have out of the state going to school?
We're out of my area of expertise on the full number for statewide. That in my head, sorry.
I mean, that seems like a small number for the number of high schools we have and the number of graduates in the state.
I'm not sure. I'm not certain. I'm sorry.
And then 75% of them are successful with remediation. Is there any indication what happens to that other 25%? Do they continue remediation? Do they go stay in school, drop out? You know,
We did not track that in this report. I can look into that, consider adding what happens to those students. We know that a very small percentage of them attempt a second time.
Yeah.
You know, a lot of our, of course, you mentioned the non-degree seeking, but a lot of the technical programs also may not require direct remediation like this. So that's not in the student.
Yeah, I'm just kind of trying to associate the number of students going to college. I know this doesn't represent all of them, but it's a pretty good cross-section of the number attending. And I'm wondering are we increasing the number going to college, or is that decreasing?
I think it seems to be your question is how many high school seniors are going on
Yeah.
versus what the national average is. So the national average on high school graduates participating in higher education opportunities is 62%, a little less than 2/3. We're about 10 points behind that. Our participation rate coming out of high school going into college is closer to half. So we're trailing the national average on participation rates by about 10%. One thing I want to point out about remediation in high school is you see this, well, why do we have students with a 3-point GPA that are coming to us and need to remediate, specifically in math? Well, I think some of that, and it's anecdotal, I don't have the analysis to back it up, but to validate these things, but a lot of our students that don't take a full schedule in the senior year, guess what they don't take? Mathematics. And so when you've got a year and a half worth of forgetting that goes on, I mean, goodness, I'd hate to take college algebra right now, honestly, and to be expected, to pass that without quite a bit of studying. But at one time, I was pretty salty in math. Still do those things, but I think that we see these GPAs and think about remediation. I think the things we talked about earlier about trying to keep that senior year schedule full. We know one of the greatest indicators in college success is whether a student manipulated numbers in their senior year of high school in some way, whether it's statistics or algebra, geometry, whatever it may be. So I think that is something that's going to longitudinally pay dividends for us, is making sure those high school senior year schedules are full. It's a culture change. I probably did a little more fishing my senior year than I should have when I could have been in class because I didn't have a full schedule. That's been a few decades ago, but we haven't changed much from that. So changing the culture and expectation of our students sticking around their senior year. So I think we'll have a long-term positive impact on our remediation. But I think the question you're asking about participation rates, does that answer your question?
Yeah.
So we're about 10 points behind the national average on participation rates at high school. Yes, sir.
Any other questions? Thank you.
Of course.
Moving on to information agenda item number 16. This is the report on student retention and graduation, which will be presented by Ms. Hazelwood.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Before I get started, I do want to address Dr. Cash's questions on the attendance. I'll be giving the college going rate report in July at the board meeting then, and I'm excited to say I have additional data on the students that went out of state this time. We did that about 4 years ago, and it was very interesting. I think we had about 6% of our students that graduated from a public high school or public charter high school went out of state. So look forward to that in July. It's coming.
Absolutely.
All right, today I have two information items for you, both on retention and graduation rates. This first one is on, I guess you could say, regular students. First, just some national retention information. The National Center for Education Statistics publishes an annual report called The Condition of Education. They published the most recent one in May of 23. They reported that 81% of the first-time full-time degree-seeking students who enrolled at a 4-year degree-granting institution in fall of 20 returned in the fall of 21. Students who enrolled at a 2-year college in fall of 20 and then returned in fall of 21 or completed their program within the year reported a 61% retention rate. For statewide retention, the retention calculations for our four-year institutions are based on students in the IPEDS cohort, all-term, first-time entering, full-time, and bachelor-seeking students that return to your institution the next fall term. Retention rates for the two-year colleges follow the same methodology for the cohort, except you also get to count students that received any certificates during that year. So you can see for our four-year public universities, we had an increase in retention rates, as did our two-year public colleges. Our four-year private and independent institutions reported a decline in retention rates for the most recent year. Here's a look, fall retention rates by gender. Both male and female cohorts showed improved retention rates for our public four-year institutions. For our two-year colleges, the female cohort reported an increase over 3%, while the male cohort reported a modest decline. Now look at the national graduation rates. Most recent information that I could find for 150% rate is based on the fall 2014 bachelor seeking student cohort. So for all institutions, including public and private, the total six-year graduation rate was 64%. That would be the black column that you see there. And it also breaks it out for you by public and then private, non-profit. The link there is just a link to the NCES website where you can pull all kinds of trend data on graduation rates. For our four-year public graduation rates, we have 100% rate and then 150% rate. As you can see, we did have a slight dip in the 100% graduation rate, but the 150% graduation rate increased 1.4%. For our two-year public colleges, there was an increase in both the 100% graduation rate and the 150% graduation rate. Most notably, an unusual 4% increase in the 150% graduation rate, which my data team is trying to dig into that and trying to figure out exactly what happened there. That's unusual to have that kind of movement. And the last slide on graduation rates for our regular students, we do for the four-year private independent institutions. There was an increase in both the 100% graduation rate and the 150% graduation rate. Any questions about the regular student retention graduation rate numbers? The full report is in the board book. That includes institutional data, trend data for all of our public and private institutions.
Well, overall, we can assume that the graduation rates are improving. Can we?
Yes, and I like giving a report where there's positive movement, yes.
I was just gonna say, well done to our schools for making sure that these students are staying in school and graduating, and to see that kind of improvement across the board is really nice. And sounds like those 150% students, that they're having fun, obviously, if they're hanging out and getting those degrees for
College life, that's right. All right, my next report is the same report, but it's for our student athletes. Just some couple of slides here. There were over 4,100 students participating in over 15 sports at our public 2- and 4-year institutions in the state. For those receiving athletic scholarships, there was actually an increase in those receiving a full athletic scholarship or those receiving no athletic scholarship, while the number of students receiving a partial scholarship declined for the most recent academic year. Student athlete retention remained relatively unchanged compared to last year's cohort. I do think the transfer portal may have something to do with these numbers going forward, because this is very specific. Our retention graduation rate calculations are based on first-time, full-time entering students. So with being allowed to exit very easily nowadays, the decline may begin. And the last slide is the graduation rates for the 150%, meaning they graduated in 6 years. We had a slight decline, but you can see that last year kind of was an unusual 53.2% that graduated. This year we ended up at 49.6%, which is rather comparable to the previous years.
Thank you, Ms. Hazelwood. Do we have any questions on information agenda item number 17?
Thank you.
Moving on to action agenda item number 18. This is the request for the AHECB slot fee increase, which begins on page 18-1 of the agenda book. Ms. Lewis will provide background for this item.
So you'll recall, it was a year ago that we came and I asked you guys to consider reallocating these slots based on where students' preference was to attend for the chiropractic slot. This chiropractic medicine is just one component of the AHECB program. And based on the recommendation from the Arkansas Chiropractic Physicians Association, they have requested the allocation, the amount that we award, be increased to $10,000. So if you'll see down there at the very bottom where it says total across the four-year program, there's 13 slots that we have at those specific institutions, but that is for 1 year. So if you carry that new student over each year, you have the allocation of 52 slots at any given time. And currently we have 22 of those filled. And our budget can sustain that at the current level of the 22 slots, the increase.
Any questions for Ms. Lewis on the Arkansas Health Education Grant Program? Any background needed or anything on this? Do I hear a motion to approve the request for the AHECB slot fee increases? So moved. Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor? Say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes. Action agenda items number 19 through 24. These are rules governing several financial aid programs, which begins on page 19-1 of the agenda book, and Mrs. Lewis will provide background on these items.
So as a result of Act 413 that was passed in the 2023 general session, this particular legislation required all of our scholarships that the state supports be offered to students who are taking summer classes. So most of the legislation and the rule changes that we're going to present to you today for your consideration are reflective of Act 413. Some of the legislation is additional components, but most of it is reflective of that summer semester. The first one is agenda item number 20. Did we skip one?
Yeah.
Agenda item number 19. This is the Arkansas Future Grant Program, and the only addition to the rules as they are is the language regarding the summer semester eligibility. And then there was an additional clarification regarding the eligible program requirements. Agenda item number 20, the Governor's Higher Education Transition Scholarship Program. This scholarship program is for students who are enrolled in specific programs that are offered across the state. And the only addition again with these rule changes are the addition of the summer semester eligibility. Agenda item number 21, the concurrent challenge scholarship. There were a couple of acts that have reflected this change. And one was the addition of the summer semester eligibility. There is an addition of the high school sophomore eligibility. That was a separate legislation. I think that was 386. And that allowed for high school sophomores to receive the concurrent challenge funds. Similarly, agenda item number 22, the Governor's Scholars Program. The only addition that was made to this program was the language regarding summer semester eligibility.
Well, that's what I need to do in the top.
All of our attendees, we ask that you mute your microphone. That was fun. Agenda item number 23, the Arkansas Workforce Challenge. Again, this was, language was added to the rules regarding the summer semester eligibility. And I think that all of these agenda items can be passed as one agenda, is that right? Okay, so I'll go ahead and speak to agenda item number 24. This is not reflecting the summer semester eligibility. This is actually a new scholarship that was created in Act 237 of 2023, also known as the Burns Act. You guys might have heard about that. There was no known author for this particular legislation. It allows aspiring teachers to receive a scholarship for tuition and fees for both bachelor and master's degrees in teaching. So this is a great opportunity for our aspiring teachers. The requirement is a 1-to-1 ratio where awardees will be required to teach in an Arkansas public school for 1 year, for every year that they receive funding. And again, this is a fantastic opportunity for increase the pipeline for aspiring educators. Any questions regarding these rule changes?
One question.
Sure.
Out of all of the scholarship monies that you have here, is that 100% of that awarded every year?
No, sir.
And then like in the Governor's Scholar and the Challenge Scholars and so forth, what happens or what percent of that money is returned because they don't attend or they don't make the grade point or whatever?
Well, it depends on, and I can get Mr. Fuller to answer some of those questions because he knows where the money is. But it depends on if it's a scholarship that's supported by lottery funds.
Yeah.
Because we draw down those lottery funds. So we don't have to return any of those back to the lottery. We just draw down as we're awarding students. Now, if we have a line item that exceeds our budget, then Mr. Fuller has to go to ALC and request a line item change. And likewise, if we have a budget item that is not completely awarded and that money stays in the reserves for future awards.
Now, when the money is returned, when a student doesn't use it or drops out, whatever, does that money go back to the state or does it carry over?
So if a student is on a roster the school submits to us for a semester,
Yeah.
we send the money to the school gets that money and is able to use it. The student doesn't lose that money until they don't complete. If they don't finish that semester and get the hours, then they're not awarded the next semester. So we won't give the money for them not completing. The school still gets the money for the semester they were there.
So you
So it
don't
wouldn't be
try to,
returned for
you
that.
don't try to get a return or a collection
No.
on if it's not used properly.
Because they did incur that expense because the student was in the class for that whole semester. So they will, so if the student dropped out at the beginning of the semester, that might be, then the school might return the funds,
Yeah.
but if they go through the full semester, even if they fail the class or something, they get to keep those funds for the payment. But any return funds do go back into the pool of money to be redistributed in the next
So we
year.
can't carry it over, use it the next year?
We do.
You do?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yeah, because the lottery funds are solely dedicated for the challenge scholarships. It's not used for any other purpose of the state. And any of the other grant funds come back into our scholarship fund to be redistributed to new awardees in the future.
Okay, good, thanks.
Any other questions? I know you were interrupted, but I appreciate the teacher pipeline piece of that. I think that's really exciting for our public schools.
We're very excited to offer it.
So with that being said, do I hear a motion to approve the rules for agenda items number 19 through 24?
Also,
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Okay, on to action agenda item number 25. This is in regards to the productivity distribution policy, which begins on page 25-1 of your agenda book. Mr. Fuller will provide background for this item.
For the two of you that have been here a little while, you've seen this rule change previously. It was presented in January of 2023 to the board. It just never made it through the full rules review process. There was a few typo changes and some edits to put it in the same format as all of our other rules coming out of the department. So what this rule has changed was doing is an amendment to reflect the overall stop loss where a school can't lose any more than 5% of funds that they had been awarded 5 years previously within our productivity model distribution. And the model they can lose up to 2% a year, but then there's a limit of 5% from their dollar amount 5 years previously. That's what the amendment to the rules is.
Do you have questions on this? Do I hear a motion to approve the productivity distribution policy? So moved. Do I have a second? Second. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion passes. At this time, Mr. Pointer will present the report of the Finance Committee.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The Finance Committee recommends the approval of agenda items 1 through 4.
Thank you. Do I hear a second to approve agenda items 1 through 4 based on the Finance Committee's report? Second. You make that first. I'm sorry, first. Sorry. Do I have a second? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? So on the report of the Academic Committee, we have agenda items 6, 7, and 10 on for approval. Motion was made from Carolyn on these. Do I hear a second to approve these agenda items?
Second.
Second from Catherine. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Action items 6, 7, and 10 pass. At this time, we're going to open the floor to any presidents and chancellors who wish to address the board this morning. Do we have any comments? Again, thank you all for the work you're doing. I think it's really encouraging to see the retention and the graduation rates improving, especially when we look at the remedial rates and what you're starting with. And I hope that there'll be further communication between higher education and the local school districts, but and cooperation between the two to work on those. But just thank you for all you're doing, because I can tell it. I mean, it's been a rough couple of years and you're doing a fantastic job. So if there are no other comments from the public, the next quarterly meeting will be held on July 26th at the University of Central Arkansas in Conway. Do I hear a motion to adjourn?
So move.
Do I have a second?